Thank you, Tom. Well, I know you're ready to get right down to it, and I have a lot of information to share with you today. And I've got a white paper, 40-page handout. Bill, if you could start passing that forward, and we'll just read through it together. How does that sound? Well, if you're like me, the sound of that makes me feel like this.
Yes.
And we're living in an information overload world, aren't we? And if we're feeling this way, our clients are probably also feeling inundated with information and content. It's a fact that 90% of all the data in the world has been generated in the last 2 years. Can you believe it? Isn't that amazing? So we feel frustrated, don't we, with all of this information coming at us? We're distracted by all the different sources by which we get the information. And we're distracted, we're bored. So, of course, today we're going to talk about the solution being stories. And it's not just the written word, because we're all visual learners. We want to use images. And the stories can be a story in one image. It can be in a series of images. It could be in a video. Sometimes the story can just be a combination of visual and words. So I'm going to give you an example of some of the trends that we're seeing. Some of you may have seen this 1-minute commercial. Let's take a listen. Does anyone remember the Volkswagen commercial at the Super Bowl? Darth Vader, a lot of you remember that. One of the special things about that commercial was, do you remember there were no words? It was totally without script. The other thing that's important to note about that commercial is that, do you remember what the commercial was selling about the Volkswagen? What was the benefit of buying a new Volkswagen? There was a new feature on the car, and it was the remote startup. Do you remember the father was in the kitchen and started up the car when his son was out front? So it was a great combination of telling a story, entertaining us, and then showing us how you can still sell something and still cover all the important points, but actually be entertaining. And there was a heartfelt moment in there too. Remember when the father and the son connected, and so you get that feeling good. So these are some of the things that we want to look at when we're creating our own stories, is we want to connect on that emotional level and have that feel good, as well as communicating the information we want to get across. So the shape of content is changing. And it's no longer just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Do anyone remember Dragnet? In the past, the information that's been coming at us in terms of white papers and things like that has been really static. What we're looking at with stories is something more dynamic. In the past, the information has been about statistics. And now we're talking about stories that string together information and really inspire us to take action. So we want conversations. Remember earlier with Karen's Q&A, we were talking about conversations. We want to find ways to have people connecting. So here's another example, mobile gas. This is a vintage ad, but I think it shows how in the past when we advertised our products and services, we really talked about features, not benefits. This is the double-powered, high-octane, whatever in the small print. Well, I went to fill up the other day at Mobil, and this was the picture that was at the tank. And this picture tells a story, and their byline is all about Mobil gives you the energy to take you where you want to go on life's journeys. So here's the story about the family pulling up and the kids arriving at grandma's house. It's a feel-good, and imagine in one visual, we get this incredible story. When we see a story like that, we're inspired to share it with other people. In fact, 63% of us remember stories. Only 5% of us remember statistics. When our stories are shared, it's a win-win. That's how we start developing trust, how we develop relationships, how we get our tribe to follow our products and services in our organization. And that's how you know your story is really worth something, because then your business begins to grow. So what I'm going to do next is show you many different examples and give you some tips on 3 things that are really important about creating your own stories. And in your packet of information, there's a sheet if you want to take notes. Feel free to do that. Also, Karen and I have some additional information that we can email to you. There's a sign-up sheet out on the table outside if you want to give us your email address or just leave your business card. I'll be giving you several examples and also showing you lots of images. I have a list of links for all the different image websites. I have the links for some of the ads and commercials that we'll be talking about. So if you leave me your information, I'll be happy to email that to you. Okay, the first thing to remember about stories is it has to be understandable, and it has to be quick to understand. Simon Sinek points out that it's not what we know as experts, it's how people understand clearly what we know. So this is really a key point, and I want to show you an example of what not to do. I got this postcard in the mail, and what do you think this postcard is about? I'll read the headline, "Diamonds are a girl's best friend." So I looked at this and I thought, oh, well, the Cardinals are coming out with, a diamond brooch to wear on your cap. Well, it turns out that this postcard is about an event at the stadium with Wash U physicians to talk about cancer screenings. So it's totally confusing. What they could have done instead, because diamonds are a girl's best friend, is a great connection with a baseball diamond. They just used the wrong image on here. If they had shown the baseball diamond, it would have worked instead of the actual diamonds as they did here. So one of the things I recommend whenever you're putting together your own materials is be sure to have someone else take a look at it for you who's not connected with your business. That's something that I help with people with all the time. So if you have something you just want me to take a quick look at, I'll be happy to give you some feedback. Second thing is you want your stories to be memorable. Hopefully this image is memorable. It's remember your last vacation, how memorable that is. That's how you want your stories to be. Does anyone remember this commercial from Guinness? And what's wonderful about this commercial is that it's memorable once you've seen it, because all the men in the wheelchairs at the end of the game get up except one man stays in the wheelchair, and they all go off to have a beer together afterwards. So, and it's all about Guinness. Their tagline is all about making choices that are true to ourselves and have an impact. So it's a very meaningful story. And most of these commercials that we'll be talking about are 1 minute. So it's amazing what can be accomplished in a short time. The third thing you want to remember about stories is you want them to be engaging. You want them to be interactive. In other words, you want people to respond. You want it to be a conversation, as we talked about earlier, so that you hear how people are responding to what you're putting out there, and you're creating a conversation You want that connection, that engagement to also be about a personal connection. So something that's heartfelt, that's moving. Those are, when people feel engaged with your story, they're going to share it. They're going to tell other people about it, or they're going to develop the trust to buy from you or join your organization. So here's an extreme example for a Heineken commercial. Did anyone see this, called The Odyssey? It's about a man who jumps onto a ship and performs all these incredible talents before jumping off again. Well, it's about a minute long, but what's interesting is once they did this, people said, well, that can't be one person that does all these things, and they were right. So they developed another video called The Odyssey Interactive. And so the limbo dancer that you saw in the previous picture, now here in this version of the commercial called The Odyssey Interactive, this appears on the screen at each moment when the character is doing something of talent. You can click and see the audition for that talent. So you can click on this right on the video as it's playing. It takes you to another video that shows you the people who auditioned for the limbo. And it's just creating an incredible level of interactive activity that is something for us to think about. This is the direction that something, I didn't even know that that was a technology that we were capable of, but it's very impressive. And it gets people talking about it, sharing it, and they're actually interacting when they click on the button. So we have, in our information age, we've been relying mainly on our logical brain, the left side of our brain. What we're moving into is using more of the right side of the brain, the emotional side. And it's been proven now that our decisions, particularly our buying decisions, are based on the emotional brain. We make emotional decisions about taking action, purchases, and then we rationalize it with the logical brain. I see some heads nodding. So for instance, this was a commercial. I don't know if anyone saw this. I saw it for the first time this week about Eckerd's. And what was fascinating, it probably was a 20-second commercial. It was so quick, but it told a story. And the story was of a family in a car driving up to Eckerd's. And then as they were getting out of the car, you saw all the electronics being thrown on the seat, like the Kindle, the phone, the iPad. And as they walked from the car, you saw them walking into Eckerd's, and the tagline was, "Simple pleasures are grown at Eckerd's." And I don't know about you, but when I saw that, I thought, wow, maybe I could unplug and go spend the day at Eckerd's, right? I mean, it just really tapped in, and it was such a short, effective story. If you look at Panera Bread's website, I circled in red, at the top, craftsmanship is one of their buttons. It says stories and recipes. And then on this page, stories from kitchen and cooking tips to the inspiration behind our food. These are our stories of care and craft. I mean, doesn't that touch some of us that maybe we would want to go there and learn more about these stories? The City Arch River Project downtown, on their website, look at this darling girl hugging the arch. Well, they're inviting the public to tell your arch story. Fill in this and finish the sentence they're asking. When I see the arch, blank. And if you go on their website, you'll see that there are business professionals, there are regular people, there are kids, there are adults, all contributing their stories to this website. Okay, what about the About Us button on websites? How many people go to that page when you go to visit a website? Does anyone? Okay, cool. So we had Will Hankey, our SEO expert, speak the other day, and he said 30% of us go to the About Us page. And I think you'll find that a lot of those pages now, you'll see more and more people calling it My Story and putting more information in there. Will himself just changed the name of his company to Red Canoe Media, and he has a story on his website about why he chose that name. So this is from a commercial. Does anyone know Virgin Atlantic Airlines? And their tagline is "Flying in the Face of Ordinary." They created this About Us video, and it's I think it's 2 or 3 minutes long. It's just amazing how they've created this video, and it's all about how the people who work at Virgin Airlines, it's from their childhood, how gifted, they have superpowers as children. Then they came to Virgin Atlantic, and that's how they're able to serve all the clients at the airlines by anticipating every need and giving people a wow experience. So it's just another great example. For my own story, as many of you know, I've been challenged with my business as to how to communicate what my services are and how I can help people with their business. And so one of the things I learned about 1.5 years ago, and it's made a huge difference, is by telling the story of the before and after with my portfolio, that's really helped me with my clients. And then also the work that I do with them is to help them turn their content information into visual stories. So I'm going to take you through a few examples. So this is a before and after. This was a 3-page role play for a training exercise, and we turned it into a game board with a marker where you can keep track of where the group is. This is a trifold brochure we turned into a postcard. The headlines here are, the mission was to recruit board members, and the headlines are, "What's your social impact? Want to create a better world? Then join our board of directors." So using questions can be huge in terms of engagement. Quick reference material. Everyone wants to know the information at a glance quickly. So this was developed for a training company, the concept of managing up. And so I used the analogy of belay climbing. It's rope climbing where you actually manage the climber above you. Here are some materials that we developed for E4E. So the first year we had a manila folder, and then the next 2 years we designed books that have not only the handouts, but some information about how to use the handouts, the schedule, also some information at the end about next steps and what to do after. This was a 15-minute conversation with a client and developed a handout with no changes. Here's another, your branding is also a story. So this client's company was prescription management, building healthy teams and leaders. So when I was asked to design a quick reference card, I made it in the shape of a capsule. And she reports that her participants in her training just love it. They're more likely to use something that they're delighted by than if it were just on that first piece of paper. Many people now are using, as a sales tool, a talk piece. So this is a good example of a way to show all the benefits of joining E4E. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a photo image. It can just be a layout with a graphic design that shows how all the pieces work together. This is a client who's really growing her business, and the story she tells is not only about her branding and doing it consistently, and of course I'm speaking about Dawn Berry, who's with us today. Thank you, Dawn. And what is so clever about what Dawn is doing is that she has four target markets here. And so what we did was we designed a separate marketing piece for each of those clients. So there's a different visual, the wording is different, and you know that each of those clients feels like she's speaking directly to them. Another quick reference could be printed on a placemat for a lunch and learn or a mouse pad. Here's a training where I created a deck of cards, so it could be used as a game during the training, and then it's a takeaway as a quick reminder when people go home. And then this is a three-dimensional brochure that I created. Remember the cootie catcher, the fortune teller we used to play with at school? So again, it has another kind of right brain emotional connection. And it's interactive. This is the workbook I use for my branding workshop. And so it's a map, and it's a treasure map. You start with a treasure, and then you end up launching your business. And when it's opened up 11 by 17, then it can be mounted as a poster when people get home from the class with their notes as reminders of things they want to do. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to looking at some visuals. One of the things I do with E4E is to help people find images for their blogs and their articles. So I'm going to ask you to play along with me, because I'm going to give you the headline and then be thinking about what would you pick for that headline. And I'm going to show you what I chose, and we'll talk a little bit about why. Okay, why is cold calling so hard? So what would you think about this picture? Maybe it would be, somebody frustrated on the phone, or, that's what we think, hard cold calling. Well, I chose this picture. Okay, because really, John Ayers, who's our cold calling expert, talks about how he can make it easy. And here's some of the pitfalls, but once you overcome those, then it can be made easier, like child's play, right? Okay, this is a long one. Long-term care just doesn't impact the family. It impacts your company's bottom line. So maybe what would we choose here? Maybe a graph about the bottom line or something. But no, we want something that people are really going to connect with. So I chose this picture because this could be, we don't know which of these men is the owner. We don't know which of these men is a family member. It just shows the love and care between these two men. And I think that creates a personal connection that goes with the information. A marketing lesson from the high chair. I love this title. This was fun. So what would I choose here? Maybe a high chair, a baby, something like that. Well, I really lucked out because I was able to find this picture, which wasn't just the baby in the high chair, but it shows another person in the picture. Even though you don't see that person, you see their hands. And when you read the article, this picture makes a little more sense. But the point I want to make is when you're looking for images, don't stop on the first page. Keep going, because sometimes I find the best images on the third or fourth page. Also, when you're looking for a particular topic, just go ahead, even though you think they won't have pictures related to that, go ahead and put those words in to search on. Sometimes I'll see a picture that's almost what I want, but not quite. Then you can see how they've described that picture and use some of those words to select again. Or there's a place, are any of you familiar with this? When you look at image websites, there's a place where you can say you want to see more photos like that one. So there's usually a button you can press, and it might just be more photos by that photographer, but sometimes it can be another way to find. Rise above your competition with your cold calling program. So again, maybe this would be some people on the phone, but I liked maybe someone on the phone on a ladder, rise above. But when I saw rise above and calling, I thought of birds. And so I did a search on birds, and when I found this picture, I knew this was it because there's one bird that stands out among the rest. Why ugly websites win. Okay, now what in the world would we pick for that? When I read the article further, it was about if content is why ugly websites win. It's almost a tongue twister. So when I found this picture, I thought this was perfect because why would anyone want to sit in that chair? Well, maybe it would only be because those books would be so good to read. And it kind of parallels what we're talking about. By the way, as I recall, this photo was free. There are some of the links that I give you where images, you can find images for free for $2 on up. So don't be afraid to check them out. Diane?
I really found that Google Images is terrific for so many different things.
And
they're free.
yeah, I should have said royalty free. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, be very careful. You don't want to take images off the website, off the internet, without going to a royalty-free image site or paying a few dollars. Okay? We'll talk.
Okay.
Tale of two pricing strategies. So what would we do here? Maybe have a couple of dollar bills or something. Well, I chose this. Remember, when you're choosing images, if they can be playful and entertaining, that's another way to engage. If they can make people curious, curiosity is a wonderful thing for engaging. 3 steps to become the captain of your life. So I was thinking a sailing ship or something like that. And I found this image, and I love this, number 1, because it was a woman, unexpected, and also because it's unexpected, this kind of space age kind of look to it. Buyers behave irrationally. What would we choose for that? I don't know, having a tantrum or something. But I love this picture. Again, totally unexpected. Doesn't that make you want to read the article or the blog? Okay, now I'm going to talk about just a few examples of when you're doing PowerPoint presentations and choosing different images. So see situations in a new way. A lot of these things are very abstract concepts. So what would we put in that situation? Well, when I found this image, I knew this was it. Because doesn't this help you see situations in a new way? Fairness. How do we show a visual for fairness? I love this image because fairness is not equal necessarily, but it's balanced. So I love the way the balls are placed differently on either end. Diversity. We always think about showing a mixed group of people, right? But what if we just show something like this to help people understand the concept of diversity? Autonomy. When do we feel autonomous? When we have the remote control. So I just want to wrap up now and remind you that our content is changing. And I really think it's changing in a great direction. It's no longer the information age, the left brain. It's, as Daniel Pink in A Whole New Mind talks about, it's moving towards the right brain. And he has a wonderful analogy, an illustration in his book. So it shows, I don't think this works. So it shows the agricultural, industrial, information age, and then he calls our next stage that we're going into the conceptual age. And it's a picture of a healthcare provider with a stethoscope and an artist's palette. Because the conceptual age is all about empathy and design and stories and things that what we're doing is we're taking the information, and now we're trying to conceptualize it. We're trying to understand it. But I think what we're really moving into is the connection age. Because I think all of this that's happening with the stories, the information, the going to the left brain, to the right brain, it's really about engagement. It's really about making connections. And so we're making connections, the three things that we talked about. Being able to understand each other quickly. It's not what we know, it's how clearly other people understand what we know. It's making our information memorable, because if it's memorable, then we're getting noticed, we're connecting. And it's engaging. If we're quick to understand, memorable, and engaging with our information, then we're developing trust in relationships. And that's what grows our business. That's what helps us to connect with each other, with our tribe, with our clients, with our customers. And that's why our story is worth a lot. So I hope you got some good information that you can take away and use with some of your stories. If you'd like any help, let me know. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of your stories. Thanks.